All right, guys, so now we are going to be starting at, let's see, we are going to be starting at slide 6 in this video. And we're going to be talking about a rhombus. And a rhombus is actually, it is a parallelogram, but it is a special parallelogram. It's a parallelogram where all the sides are congruent. So that's going to be one of our properties that we see here today. So actually these first 5, we're not going to relabel because these first 5 are the same properties that you saw on slide 2 for parallelograms. Okay, so we'll fill in the blanks, but we're not going to relabel that stuff. All the things we learned in the first video, they all still apply here. But what we're going to do, we're going to add some special properties that make this a rhombus. So opposite sides are still parallel. They're still congruent. Opposite angles are still congruent. Consecutive angles are still supplementary. And diagonals are still going to bisect each other. So those are all things that we saw in the first video. Now, what makes this special, if you see in the problem that it is a rhombus now has 4 congruent sides. So they can give us any side of a rhombus and it is exactly the same. We can set it equal. Okay. The next special property here, the diagonals are perpendicular. Okay, the diagonals are perpendicular. Perpendicular means that they make right angles. So all of these angles here in the middle, they are 90-degree angles. Perpendicular means 90 degrees. So we know they're 90-degree angles. And then diagonals bisect opposite angles. So now in a rhombus, it's even more specific. We know that all of these little angles are all 4 the same. And we know that all of these little angles are all 4 the same. Okay, so you can see we've got 4 triangles there. We're going to be doing some triangle stuff here when we're dealing with rhombus problems. All right, next slide. Got a couple of questions. The first one says, is this parallelogram a rhombus? And they will ask you this sometimes. They will say, hey, here's a shape, it's a parallelogram. Do you know enough to know it's a rhombus? So when I look at this, the only information that they gave me with numbers is angle G. They gave me that one part of it is 43 and one part is 42. Well, if we look back at our picture, I see that everywhere a diagonal is intersecting that one of these 4 angles, the 2 pieces should be equal. They should be exactly the same. So this is not a rhombus because 43 and 42 are not the same. Now, if they were the same, if they had told us they were both 43, then yes, it would be a rhombus. Or if they had told us they were both 42, it would be a rhombus. But this goes against one of the properties. So this is not a rhombus. Now look at the second one. It says, is this parallelogram a rhombus? And the only information they gave me, they told me there's a right angle in the middle. Well, if I look back, a rhombus does have right angles in the middle. So that lines up with my picture, with my properties. So yes, it is a rhombus. So if they ask you this question, which I believe they do towards the beginning of the IXL, then you're just looking at the information they gave you and comparing it to what we put on our picture or as properties of a rhombus. Okay. All right, now let's do some solving. We have a quadrilateral. It is a rhombus. What is the measure of angle GIH. Okay, now when we are finding that angle GIH, remember to go in order. Start at G, next go to I, and then end at H. So this is the angle that they're actually asking for right here. The middle letter is the vertex. Okay, that's how you figure out what angle they're asking for. So let's just start labeling some stuff that we know because it's a rhombus. Okay, because it's a rhombus, I know that all of these angles here are 90. Because it's a rhombus, I know that if this angle's 34, so is this one, and this one, and this one. They're all the same. So if I'm trying to find this angle down here, I now can look at this triangle as its own problem because triangles add up to 180 degrees. So I know two angles, 34 plus 90. So if I find out what those two angles equal, then I get that, hey, they equal 124. So I can subtract those two angles from 180 and it will tell me my missing angle. So the missing angle would be 56 degrees. And all that means, they could have asked me for any of the other missing angles. All of these, just so you know, are 56. In a rhombus, those will all four be the same as well. Okay, so when you're working through these IXL problems, use these notes, use these examples, because again, these came straight from IXL, so they should help you kind of line up what information you were given and what you're solving for. So here's another problem. Quadrilateral is a rhombus. That's important. What is the value of t? And they gave me these two sides. Now, if this was just a parallelogram, I couldn't do anything. But because it's a rhombus, I know all four sides are equal. They're all congruent. So I can solve by setting them equal. Okay, so 26 equals t. All right, and that is everything for a rhombus. So you can now work on the IXL that goes along with rhombus.